What's up, everybody? Max Whitman here. We're back again. Excuse me. This is just going to be another video, probably about 25-30 minutes long. Just going to get into a little bit about character development. I put up a video a little while ago, about a week or so ago, about storyline development and how I go about planning my storylines and what goes into that and just the thought process behind everything, the goals behind everything. And I had mentioned that for me, character development is a super important aspect of that storyline development. I mentioned that I try and get a video up about how I do my character development in addition to that. So that's what this is going to focus on today. You see, I got my WWF 1994 save up here. I'm actually going to put this, I'm going to put this up as probably before, it'll probably go up as soon as I'm done recording it, honestly. I'm not going to add it to the schedule that I have going on right now. Whatever, well, I'm thinking out loud here, I apologize. Basically, I kind of got back into WWF 94. This was the first save that we did. So a lot of you guys who've been following me from day one, you'll recognize this. This is that same save. I kind of got back into it, was watching some old WWF stuff, picked it back up again, and honestly, the time away from it did wonder. They say absence makes the heart grow fonder, because I picked WWF 94 back up again, and I've been having a blast with it. So I just recorded about 3 weeks, 3 episodes or so. We're in December of 94 right now. I do not want to get too deep into the actual game right now because there's some spoilers in there if you've been following. I will be putting a creative meeting up about WWF shortly, only because it's been so long since I've done it. But those videos will be going up soon. Impact Wrestling, I apologize, has kind of fallen off a little bit. Kato and I we've just been kind of crazy busy at work. We haven't really had a chance to sit down together and get that stuff going, which is why I'm doing a little bit of 94 WWF on my own, just to kind of keep some content getting in here. But I've been having a blast with it, but that's neither here nor there. Long story short, what we're going to do today is we'll go over my character development stuff. Full disclosure, there may be some 94 spoilers in here. I don't really remember. Yeah, there's 1 or 2 spoilers in here, but nothing crazy huge, and I'm sure if you're following along, you're probably watching the creative meetings anyway, so I doubt it's that big a deal. But if you don't want spoilers for this save for 94, you may not want to watch this video. So here goes nothing. So when I take over a company, when I start a save, generally, not as much with WWF or real-life mods, but let's say I'm working Cornellverse, I write up a character development Word doc. And it's just real short, about a paragraph for each guy, sometimes less, sometimes more. But I like to do it with real-world mods too, only because it helps, I find, that if you give each character A, a personality, B, a short-term goal, and C, a long-term goal, sometimes you find that storylines just kind of develop on their own. And what I mean by that is you might find that you've got more than one guy who have similar goals. I like to write up my goals for each guy without thinking of, well, this guy could team with this guy maybe, and this guy could maybe work here, and this guy... That's not how I do it. I try and really think individually, what would this guy want? What does this guy's character want? Not this guy in real life, this guy's character. What would his character want? So obviously The Undertaker isn't going to be... I'm not going to try and come up with what Mark Calloway wants. I'm going to try and come up with what The Undertaker would want, the character that I've developed. Just coming up with characters for people could be a whole different video on its own, is coming up with new characters, original characters. But then once you've come up with that character, you need to develop it. That's really more what this is about, is getting inside the head of that character. Not that worker, that character that either you've created from scratch, or that the game has created for you. If you've created it from scratch, that's even better. That's even easier for you. Because the character is born out of your own head, and so you're already in there a little bit. When you play with like a WWF, it can be a little tougher to do that because you have to kind of get inside that character's mind. You almost have to become that character. But so yeah, give them a little personality, give them a short-term goal, give them a long-term goal, and you might find that storylines develop just because you just kind of happen to stumble upon two guys who have similar goals. And those similar goals, maybe those guys use those similar goals to work together and form a tag team. Maybe those two guys have similar enough goals, but both of those guys' goals are to win the Intercontinental Championship. Well, maybe that's a storyline in the making. Maybe you can put those two guys in with a three-way, in some sort of a three-way storyline with the Intercontinental Champion. Maybe the two guys kind of feud with each other, and one of them earns the Intercontinental title opportunity and wins the belt. Now you have a title feud between those two guys, and you tend to develop long-term storylines because everything about the what ends up happening is the characters write the story, as opposed to you coming up with a story and then having to plug and play these characters into, that maybe this guy could fit in there. Yeah, let me do that with him. But you already have the story written. Whereas in this case, you kind of have an idea of what that character would do in that situation, and so the story the character pushes that narrative. So what I want to do is I'll just jump into some of what I got written down here. And we'll just start at the top. These are all my main eventers. So these are my 1994 main eventers plus IRS. We'll get into that. IRS was just a random one. I closed my eyes, threw my clicker up and down the thing and picked the guy I wanted to do and picked the guy that I wanted to do a character development for. It wasn't really I think he's an upper mid carder. But long story short, I got all my main eventers done here. So all my main eventers now have some form of character development, some more than others. So we'll take Bam Bam, for example. There's a couple of guys on here that I want to... I'm not going to read through everything. I mean, you can see I got 4 pages worth of stuff here. So I'm not going to read through every single one of them. But I want to read through a couple of them and just kind of point out the different styles of development and the different types of goals that I might use for some of these guys. So we'll start with Bam Bam Bigelow just because it's at the top of the page, right? Bam Bam is a no-nonsense big man who doesn't have time for games. He's here for the money and refuses to let anyone get in his way. Generally a lone wolf who will occasionally team up with someone if there's a benefit for him. So that is the Bam Bam Bigelow personality. There's no goals there, maybe except for he's here for the money, but that's just his personality, his general personality. So what that does for me is now I have a general idea of how Bam Bam acts, right? So if I'm looking to make a tag team, and I'm looking for guys, and I'm like, oh, well, a big man could fit in there, and I'm going to run through and be like, well, what about Bam Bam? I'm going to go back and I'm going to look at his character development. And I'm going to read that Bam Bam is generally a lone wolf who occasionally teams up with someone if there's a benefit for him. So that's either going to eliminate him from the running if I'm trying to form a tag team, or it's going to make me say, okay, well, Bam Bam could team with him, but what would be the benefit for Bam Bam? Would that fit any of his goals? Would that fit a narrative that Bam Bam is pushing at that moment? And maybe a storyline develops from that. Just because now I got to do a little bit more thinking if I really want Bam Bam on this team. I really want Bam Bam and Yokozuna to be a big man tag team. But Bam Bam's character dictates that he would need a real reason, a real beneficial reason to him to join that tag team. And so it just kind of kickstarts those creative juices in a way. And it gives you a reason and kind of a little bit of a direction to kind of pick up, okay, well, what might that reason be? his short-term goal, establish himself as the best big man in the company. So Bam Bam's one of those guys, just on a personal level, that every time I play an era sort of like this, I see Bam Bam and I say, man, Bam Bam probably could have been a world champion, or Bam Bam, but he just wasn't. He kind of was in that era. I mean, Shawn Michaels was coming up, and Brett was still around, and there were just a lot of guys who were better, but arguably Bam Bam's arguably one of those guys who should have been a world champion and wasn't. And so every time I play, I tend to think, man, I'd really love to push Bam Bam. And so I just kind of made his goal as to establish himself as the best big man in the company. And that sort of gives me a reason to push him, right? Bam Bam he's just trying to become, he wants to show that he's got the agility to be to be that guy. And he just really wants to establish himself as that. He wants to show that he can compete at the highest level. His long-term goal is to become a world champion. Now, when I say long-term goal, I mean long-term goal. This is a goal that Bam Bam might have before he retires. It doesn't even have to be in the WWF. But it's that long-term goal that Bam Bam is working towards. And his short-term goal will feed that long-term goal. So right now, he's not focused on titles. He's just focused on establishing himself as the best big man in the company. Why? Because once he's established as the best big man in the company, now he's in a better position to become a world champion. So that short-term goal feeds that long-term goal. And everything that I do with Bam Bam Bigelow is going to be pushing him towards that direction of being a world champion. Does that mean that I have any intention of making him a world champion? No. Maybe. I think he could be. But I think for him, the character, that's what he would want. And that's what he's pushing towards. And so from a storyline, from a creative perspective, anything that I do with him should be, for him, it should appear that he's making an attempt to push towards that goal. Otherwise, there's no continuity. Otherwise, you could have a guy doing one thing one week and one thing another week. It's a Vince Russo kind of thing, where it's that crash TV, where things don't link up. Guys are doing one thing on Monday and a whole other thing on Sunday at the pay-per-view, something totally different. I like my guys to have continuity in their storylines. So anything that I come up with for Bam Bam is going to be sort of pushing in that direction. Even if he's working mid-card matches, right? Even if Bam Bam doesn't have a current storyline, I'm still going to try and put him in matches where he showcases himself as that top big man. And it just kind of gives a little bit of direction for that kind of, for booking a little bit. If we bump down to Chris Jericho, Chris Jericho is a cocky, arrogant, young up-and-comer who has all the tools to be a star. His goal is to be the face of the WWF, no matter the cost. Jericho is tired of the WWF being the land of the giants, and wants to turn the focus of the company to a great in-ring product. He believes he is the best wrestler in the world, and he's out to prove it. So there's his personality, right? Now, just me reading that, already gives a storyline idea. And if you haven't picked up on it, you'll see that Bam Bam Bigelow's goal is to establish himself as the best big man in the company. Chris Jericho's personality is that he's tired of the WWF being the land of the giants. He wants to turn the focus to a great in-ring product. Now, again, does it mean that I'm going to feud Jericho and Bigelow? Not necessarily. Certainly not right now. They're both heels, so I'm not going to feud two heels together. But there's a storyline there, and it's a storyline that I didn't even think of until literally I was reading this second. Even when I was typing this, it didn't occur to me that there is a match there. And the reason for that is that I wasn't considering Bam Bam Bigelow when I was writing Chris Jericho. For all I know, I could have written Bam Bam and Chris Jericho a week apart. I didn't even remember what I was writing for Bam Bam. But reading it back, you immediately notice, okay, there's a possible storyline there. Is it right now? No. But eventually, down the road, these two guys could meet. If one of them happened to turn babyface, likely Jericho. Why? Because he wants to be the face of the WWF. He's doing it as a heel right now, but he could possibly turn. Could it be Bam Bam? It could be Bam Bam. The crowd could turn and realize, hey, this Bigelow guy can work. Right? Bam Bam can go. He can really go. I'm just going to move this a little bit, make it a little bigger for me. He can really go. Maybe they turn from booing him to cheering him just based on his in-ring ability. So there's a storyline there, and it was one that you didn't even have to try, really, to make happen. Jericho's short-term goal, defeat older workers and cement himself in the upper echelon. If you've watched the series, that's kind of what we've been doing with Jericho. He took on Randy Savage, to get a match against Randy Robinson, the Ram. A match with Bret Hart. He lost to Bret, but kind of going after those older guys, because Jericho at this time, he's only about 23 years old, but he's made it his goal to defeat those older workers and start to use that to turn the tide and turn the direction of the WWF. His long-term goal, become figurehead. So you'll see here a goal like that, whereas Bam Bam wants to become a world champion, Chris Jericho wants to become the figurehead. It's bigger than a world championship to him. Jericho could theoretically accomplish his goal without ever becoming the heavyweight champion, or without ever winning a belt at all. So his long-term goal, similar to Bam Bam's, but significantly different in the fact that it's not about a title for Jericho. Will he have to take a title to reach that point? Most likely. Will he be in the title picture because of that? Most likely. But he doesn't have to win a world title. He wants to be the guy, the ace, the top dog, the big dog, if you're a Roman Reigns guy. That's what he wants. So there's a lot of different ways that I could then go about having Chris Jericho chase that goal. The easiest and quickest way, put him in a world title hunt, right? Put him in a world title hunt. Now he's the youngest world champion, he's got the belt, whatever. But his goal in the end is to become that figurehead, to unseat the current figurehead and cement himself there. What does that mean? It means that eventually I'm going to have to turn him babyface. So it gives me personally a little bit of direction, just because if I want to push him to accomplish that goal, I'll have to turn him. So it gets those creative juices going, and just gives me a few different ideas on different things that he could be doing storyline wise. Now, as these short-term goals are accomplished, I'll be going, you have to go back in. The only thing about doing this character development is that you do have to stay on top of it. It does add a little bit of an extra layer of work. Although I find that most TEW players don't really care about that little extra work. For a lot of TEW players, the devil's in the details. That's really why we play, right? We like the spreadsheets. We like the multiple documents. We like tracking stats and all that. That's why we play the game. So for me, it's not a big deal. But you do have to go back in and occasionally change their short-term goals. When you change their short-term goals, you need to make sure that whatever their next short-term goal is still feeding that long-term goal until the point that they've accomplished the long-term goal, and then you're going to change that again. That's not to say that long-term goals don't change before they're accomplished. It's entirely possible that you come up with an idea for a guy, and you think this guy's perfect for it, and you go ahead and you make the change, and you shift gears with him, and you change his character's long-term goal. That's perfectly acceptable. That's perfectly fine to do. Sometimes it's a nice thing to do because it creates sort of an organic an organic storyline that just kind of popped up. Let's do Diesel. Yeah, so a brand new babyface who's been relegated to watching over other people his whole career. He's always been the bridesmaid and never the bride, and has taken on the bodyguard role after bodyguard role. After being screwed by HBK, Diesel vowed never to stand in someone else's shadow again. He's moved on his own and is poised to reach the top. Diesel has an all-business attitude and uses brute strength to gain the upper hand. So this is a personality trait that I gave to him just recently as I changed him to a babyface, because I needed to change either him or HBK, and I wanted it to be him. But I wasn't really sure that his current character sort of fit that babyface role. And so this is what I came up with. As a short-term goal, to take the Intercontinental title back from HBK. That just makes sense. HBK screwed him out of it. He feels betrayed. He wants it back. That's easy peasy. It's a storyline. It's a current storyline. But the long-term goal for him is to form a team of guys who come from similar backgrounds as him and give them a place to shine on their own. So it's sort of a different take on Kevin Nash, the Diesel character. It's sort of a different take in that it's a little bit softer. He's still going to use that all-business attitude. He's still going to use that brute strength, that powerhouse style. But he's making it his goal now to be the leader of a stable. But in this stable, there is no bodyguard character. There's no one character whose sole purpose is to get other guys over. He wants to form a stable of guys that come from his sort of background. Guys who spent years as an enforcer or a bodyguard helping somebody else and then have that guy turn on them. He's sort of shooting to create a place, a safe haven for those guys to go. And that's his goal, is to create that stable and have it be one of the most successful stables. So his short-term goal to take that Intercontinental title back, that's important to Diesel because it validates him as a singles competitor. And it validates him in his own mind and in the minds of the fans and the people watching the product. It validates the fact that he is capable of performing as a singles wrestler on his own. And that he doesn't have to be relegated to a backup or an enforcer. So that's an important step. Winning that Intercontinental belt is an important step to that long-term goal. Giving himself what's the word I'm looking for? The credentials, I guess, maybe, to even form a stable. Because, what's a bodyguard to form his own stable? Who's going to join that stable? Well, if he's the Intercontinental Champion, then maybe there's some credence there that this guy's a solid performer. This guy can go out and get it on his own, and maybe it's somebody that you want to join up with. So his goal is sort of to create a help all kind of thing. Not a help all thing, but you know what I'm saying. I don't know how to explain it. If you don't get it, you get it. Owen Hart. Look, I'm going to end up reading this whole first page. I swear I'm going to skip some of these. Owen Hart has spent his career in Brett's shadow. With Brett moving on to WCW, Owen sees his time as now to show the world that he was always the best wrestler in the Hart family. He's angry with the world for choosing the clearly inferior worker in Brett over him, and will do anything now that Brett has gone to grab that brass ring. Spoiler alert! I probably should have popped it in before, but if you haven't been watching. If you haven't watched the creative meeting, did we do a creative meeting? I think I did a creative meeting on my own. I did. Long story short, Brett is leaving the company for WCW. He got upset, he got angry, his morale was real low, and he walked. So Owen sees this now. Brett was the babyface, Owen's the heel. Owen sees this as his opportunity to shine. Owen's bitter. We actually ran a storyline between Brett and Owen, with Brett going over at SummerSlam for the title, to defend the title, I should say. But we ran that exact storyline where Owen was that jealous little brother, and we're going to continue that even after Brett is gone, and we're going to continue that just by making it Owen's goal, his short-term goal, to lead the new Hart Foundation to Tag Team Gold. So Owen now sees he's working with Jim Neidhart, sees it as an opportunity to show that he's always been the better Hart brother, always been the better wrestler, and he's going to take Jim Neidhart and do even more than Brett did with him. He's going to win that tag team belt again and hold it for a long period of time or whatever. But his current goal is just to win that Hart Foundation gold. His long-term goal is to be the man everybody thinks of when they think of the Hart family. This is a goal that I love. And I love it because it's a deep goal, right? And it's a real goal. And there's so many ways to approach that. Owen could go on to become a 15-time tag team champion with Neidhart. And maybe that would establish himself as, the things that he did with the Hart Foundation that Brett never could. Maybe Owen becomes a world champion. Maybe Owen wins multiple King of the Rings. He wins Royal Rumbles. Whatever it is, Owen's goal, he wants to be the guy they think of. Maybe he becomes a great promo man and When everybody thinks of Brett, they think of that boring promo. When they think of Owen, they think of that great promo. There's a lot of different ways that we can go about it. And it also opens the door, just in case Brett ever comes back. It wouldn't be until about 1998. He just signed a 4-year deal with the WCW. But theoretically, let's say Owen leads the New Heart Foundation to gold, goes on to become a world champion, building his legacy, the whole 9 yards. Now suddenly 1998 rolls around. Guess who rolls back in? Bret the Hitman Hart. Now we got a storyline right there between Bret and Owen where we can finally put them together one more time. Owen lost. The last time they wrestled was 4 years ago and Owen lost. Maybe Owen's the champion at the time. Whatever. There's a whole long-term, boatload of stuff that we could do with that. And so it's one of those storylines that will build itself. And I'm actually really excited to do it. But it's different than all these other ones. You see Bam Bam become a world champion, Jericho become a figurehead, Diesel, form a stable. Those are all wrestling related. Owens is personal. It's family related. Be the man everyone thinks of when they think of the Hart family. It has nothing to do with wrestling. Obviously, wrestling is what's going to give him that voice, that platform. But it's deeper than that. It's deep rooted, and it's deep rooted. It's 28 years of fuel on that fire. Finally coming in. Owen finally sees this as his moment, and you build this storyline and imagine the effect it might have if that moment doesn't happen, or he reaches the pinnacle and loses, or he finally makes it to the top. 4 years later, finally gets there, and Bret comes back. There's just a lot of stuff that you can do with that. And frankly, it just makes sense for Owen. IRS, I'm only going to get into because I wasn't sure. I don't particularly like IRS at all. He was a random guy that I picked. If it was up to me, he'd just be a jobber. But he is on the upper mid card. He does put together good matches. So, IRS, well, he just enjoys breaking things and hitting people with his suitcase. Or with whatever he has on hand. He doesn't want to be the best. Doesn't even have a goal. He just is happy to be put out there to cause damage and hurt whoever's in the ring. Doesn't mind getting hit, but touch his tie or his pens, and he will give you a world of pain and force you to apologize or else. That's it. Doesn't like when he gets his tie touched. That's the IRS gimmick. Why does he not need any goals? Frankly, because I really just plan on using him as kind of a gatekeeper. He's the guy everybody's going to beat on their way to the main event. He'll beat the mid-carders. I don't really have much storylines for him. I never have any ideas for IRS. I don't like the character. So it's possible that I just change his character altogether. Funny, I had Maxine in here asking her, what I should do with his name, IRS, and she was like, well, what about I wreck shit with the W in parentheses? So that's kind of what we went with. That's what IRS is going to stand for now. I wreck shit. That's his gimmick. But yeah, some guys don't need goals. I like to try and have everyone have some kind of a goal, but it's okay to not have a goal. And in not having that goal, you create a gimmick, right? IRS just wants to break shit. He wants to hurt people, but don't fuck with his tie. Simple as that. It doesn't have to be. There doesn't have to be a goal. Now, I wouldn't have more than 2 or 3 guys like that without a goal. Because without the goals, you end up without direction, right? But to have 1 or 2 guys in there, even if they're upper mid-card or main event guys, not the biggest deal. Jeff Jarrett, honestly, I haven't really had much, we got the Power Cat gimmick going, so that's what I did for Jarrett. Jarrett's a feline enthusiast. He loves the musical Cats and has a real affinity for the common house cat. He'll do anything to help a cat out and wants everyone to know that dogs are truly inferior animals. Short-term goal, spread feline awareness. Long-term goal, star in Cats the Musical. Right? Why? Because it's sort of a comedy gimmick. That's really what we're doing with the Power Cats. I don't like Lex Luger. I don't like Jeff Jarrett. I put them in a tag team together as the Power Cats, and I got to give him some sort of a cat gimmick. So that's what Jeff Jarrett gets. That's what the character gets. Again, could it change? Sure, it could change. But for now, this gives direction to that character. It gives direction to that tag team. Now, where I was ordinarily, where I was struggling, let me get some water here. where I was struggling to come up with angles for the Power Cats, suddenly I've got a couple of ideas for those angles. Why? Well, we can just have angles where Jeff Jarrett comes out and tries to spread feline awareness. Maybe he has a lot of cat facts he wants to give people. It's silly and it's funny, but Jarrett's great on the mic. Those segments may actually get a decent rating score. They may actually do okay. You never really know. The game doesn't know that he's talking about cat facts. The game just knows. The game just knows that he's got a high charisma rating. So the game doesn't realize, that Jeff Jarrett is talking about feline awareness. It just realizes that he has good charisma and he's out there cutting a promo. So even something silly like that, just real basic. I got no plans for Jeff Jarrett. And who knows? Things develop from that sometimes. So I put something simple and funny there, and sometimes it works, and sometimes something else sparks from it. We'll move on to the next one, and I'm not 100% sure how this is going to flow, because I just took about a 5-minute break to put Hurricane Maxwell to sleep. I paused the recording, came back, so if that little segment there didn't gel well, that's probably the reason why. I probably forgot where I was. But we're going to skip over Jerry Lawler, and we're going to go right to Jim Neidhart. Simply put, Neidhart is the muscle. Always has been, always will be. Jim has zero qualms being the bodyguard, and he doesn't mind being the muscle of the tag team. He's especially loyal to the Hart family and will do anything for them. Jim likes to fight. Anything else after that is a bonus. His short-term goal, help Owen Hart further his career. His long-term goal, help establish the Hart family as the greatest wrestling family in history. So Jim is in a unique position here because Jim is essentially the opposite of Diesel. So there's potential for a storyline there. He could be a guy that maybe Diesel tries to recruit for his stable, but Jim is happy being the bodyguard, and Diesel doesn't understand how somebody could possibly be happy being a bodyguard, and so there's a storyline right there. Jim is also sort of caught in the middle of the Owen and Brett drama. Even though Brett is gone, Owen is trying, Jim Neidhart's current goal is to help Owen further his career. But he's also fiercely loyal to the Hart family, and that includes Brett. So while Owen and Brett might be feuding, or they might have some bad blood, Jim and Brett don't. But Jim works with Owen, and Brett works in WCW. So for the time being, Jim and Owen are a team. If Brett were to come back, well, Jim's in a tough spot, isn't he? He is. And that's the story there. For now, he's just the backup guy. He's the muscle, and he's cool with being the muscle. He likes to fight, so any excuse for it is good with Jim. But if Brett were to ever come back, or if another one of the Hart family were to come in, who knows? Maybe Bruce comes in. Maybe any of the other. Maybe there's a storyline where the whole Hart family comes in. Well, Jim has to make kind of a decision there as to where he's at because he's loyal to all of them. Neidhart, that's the goal. It's just simply to establish the Hart family as the greatest wrestling family in history. And his short-term goal is to help Owen further his career because Owen is the only Hart he's working with right now. So the short-term goal, again, feeds the long-term goal. Not much for Lex. Just got him kind of left WCW, different than man. Lex is made of WWF, trying to live up to the potential he has. Got tied up with Jeff Jarrett, discovered his love of cats. Lex never considered himself an animal person, but ever since meeting Jeff, he's become totally enthralled with the lifestyle. I fucking hate Lex Luger. That's why he's a power cat. That's why he thinks he's a cat. That's why he's totally enthralled with the feline lifestyle. I hate Lex Luger. I don't know why. I don't really like his face. Lex seems like a good guy, but I never got into him, never was a fan, and so his short-term goal now, win the tag belts with the Power Cats, and his long-term goal is to become the top performer that he was hyped as. That's really just kind of because Lex, kind of with the WWF at least, it never really worked out for him. He never became that top dog, that new Hogan. And so his long-term goal is to become that guy. Will he ever become that guy? Not likely. Not in my save. But it doesn't mean that can't be his goal. It's entirely possible that a percentage of these guys will never reach their long-term goal because it's kind of a boring show if every single guy reaches their goals, right? So Lex, everything he does will be to get to that top performer spot, but it doesn't mean I have to push him there. It just means that on television, on TV, and on events, he has to act that way. So he has to act within his long-term goal aspirations. Even if I have no intentions of pushing him there, he has to further that narrative on his own anytime you see him. Razor I like. Cocky and cool, nothing ever seems to faze the bad guy. Razor is always collected. He never lets his emotions get the better of him, and he always makes sure to stay one step ahead of his opponent. He thinks things through and always has a plan before he acts. Razor Ramon has all the tools to be a champion, and he's well aware of that fact. He tends to look at things as a giant puzzle where everything is interconnected. He's intensely focused on his goals, and is aware that sometimes you need to sidestep from the most direct route and take the long way. His short-term goal, raise his popularity with the fans. His long-term goal, win the WWF title. The character idea that I have for Razor is sort of like, imagine you mixed Tony Montana, or Razor for that example. Imagine you mixed Razor Ramon, the real-life character, and you mixed him with like a Tyrion Lannister kind of guy, right? Where maybe he's not as in-depth there as Tyrion is, but I like the idea of Razor kind of standing back and seeing everything objectively and connecting those pieces of the puzzle and recognizing that while his goal might be to win the WWF title, maybe he first has to help somebody else win the WWF title. Maybe he wants to help somebody who he thinks he has an easier time beating win that title first, and then swoop in and take that title from that guy. Something like that. Is that the story that I'm building? No, that's literally just something I came up with right now. But it's the idea behind Razor that I think would be kind of cool. Almost like he's as sharp as a razor's edge. You know, it's just part of his gimmick. That he sees everything from the outside looking in and understands the value in taking the long way, right? Which would be why his short-term goal is simply to raise his popularity with the fans. Work the fans. He's a babyface right now. Work the fans. Get them to appreciate him. Kind of get them to cheer him. The whole deal. And sort of put himself in a position where because of the fan reaction, he's in a better spot to kind of throw his weight around because the fans actually give a shit about him. Let's go. Shawn Michaels I like. There's only one man that matters to HBK, and that is HBK. Shawn's never had a friend he wouldn't stab in the back for the right opportunity. Shawn may pretend to be loyal, he may pretend to be your friend, but make no bones about it, Shawn Michaels is not your buddy. HBK has a single-track mind. He wants gold, the fame, and the money. And if he so much as gets a hint that you might threaten that, he's going to make his move on you. That's not to say Shawn can't be your pal, as long as you don't encroach on his shine. His short-term goal, hold the Intercontinental title for as long as possible. His long-term goal, become the greatest professional wrestler who ever lived. It's basically to say that you can be friends with Shawn, but you can't be a friend on the same footing as Shawn. It's sort of close to what he was at that time in real life, but it's a little bit of a, it just sort of opens that door for a lot of backstabbing with Shawn. That's kind of how I see him. I'm a huge Shawn Michaels fan. He's to me, he's the greatest of all time. He's my favorite wrestler of all time. But in that same breath, I'll say that for the sake of this game, I don't want to do everything the way it happened in real life. So there's a part of me that wants to give Shawn, a long run with the Intercontinental belt or something along those lines, or have him do something other than be that top dog. But I'm not sure. So to me, like I said, he's the current Intercontinental champ. Let's have him hold that title as long as possible and see where that develops. But sort of build him as sort of a lone wolf kind of guy. A manipulator, that kind of stuff. Sid Vicious, I don't need to read through the whole thing, but basically you get the gist. Sid ain't the brightest bulb in the box. In fact, he may legitimately be insane. That's basically what we're doing with Sid. That was his legitimate character. His short-term goal, win back the tag team titles. Long-term goal, who the heck knows, this guy's nuts. There's nothing wrong with having a character like that. There's nothing wrong with having a character who might not have a long-term goal. Maybe he doesn't think that far ahead. He has short goal, short goal, short goal, short goal. And he just jumps from one short-term goal to the next. That's fine too. Again, you don't want too many of those characters. Why? Because those characters tend to be sort of aimless. But for a guy like Sid Vicious, Psycho Sid, Aimless is good. It works. So there's nothing wrong with having that kind of guy. In that same breath, there's nothing wrong with having a guy who doesn't have short-term goals, but only has a long-term goal. Case in point, we'll go to Tatanka. Tatanka is fiercely proud of his Native American descent. In a world full of fake patriots and Americans, Tatanka is the real deal. His pride in his culture runs deep and means he leads a life dedicated to the Native American values he was brought up with. Loyalty to your family, respect, discipline, and pride in your work. Tatanka will never waver from these values, no matter what life throws at him. Short-term goal? We're not sure. Long-term goal? Dedicate his career to his core values. That puts Tatanka in an interesting position. It puts him in a position where I can take him now and throw him into any sort of storyline where he might see people aren't acting within those values, maybe. He's a babyface, so maybe there's a heel, and that heel is whatever, being disrespectful or whatever. Well, Tatanka could be that guy that comes out and confronts him. He doesn't have to have a short-term goal. His long-term goal is simply to dedicate his career to those core values. And it sort of puts him in a spot where he can just be plugged in into a couple different areas. You know, maybe somebody gets hurt. Okay, we'll tweak the storyline a little bit and make it so that Tatanka can get involved. You know, you don't have to have a guy with long-term goals, just like you don't have to have a guy with short-term goals. And Sid Vicious and Tatanka are the perfect examples of those. That's kind of where... we'll do Vader as well, and then like a Vader and Yoko, that's about it. But we'll cover Vader real quick, and then we'll end the video, because we're about getting where I want to be cutting this off. What are we at? About 41 minutes right now. We're about getting where I want to cut this off. So let's cover Vader. Monster among men, Big Van Vader's been a multiple-time heavyweight champion everywhere he's ever gone. 3-time IWGP, 3-time WCW. Vader's insane athleticism for a man of his size is unrivaled and arguably unbeatable. Vader has yet to debut in the WWF, but there's no doubt he will immediately set his sights on the company's top belt. Spelled sights wrong. Let's change that. That's going to bug me. On the company's top belt. So his short-term goal, win the heavyweight belt. Long-term goal, do enough to earn a spot in the Hall of Immortals. I noticed when I signed Vader, and I signed him from WCW actually to replace Bret Hart. Not the greatest deal. Bret's a little bit younger. Vader got a little more star quality, though. I noticed that he was 95% of the way to becoming a Hall of the Immortals inductee. So that just gave me, I was like, okay, well, Vader, he's 37 years old, getting towards the end of his career. That's his long-term goal now. His long-term goal is to do enough to earn a spot in the Hall of the Immortals. Then I noticed that he was a 3-time champion Japan, 3-time champion WCW. I said, well, great. He should be setting his sights on the heavyweight title. Wouldn't it be awesome if he was a 3-time champion Japan, 3-time champion WCW, 3-time champion WWF? Will that happen? I don't know. He's 37, so who knows? But I thought that would be kind of a cool little thing to kind of shoot for with him. And it would certainly make sense that he's coming to WWF at the end of his career after being released by WCW. He's coming to the WWF to try and get over that one last hump. He thinks if he can win the WWF title, that'll be all it'll take to get him into that Hall of Fame, or the Hall of Immortals in the game talk. So that's kind of where I'll leave this one. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you got something out of it. It's not a whole lot, honestly. It's pretty simple. Give everyone a little bit of a personality, give everybody a short-term goal, and give everybody a long-term goal, usually. You don't have to always follow those rules like we talked about. You don't have to give someone a short-term goal, and you don't have to give them a long-term goal, but I wouldn't overuse that. Otherwise, you get a lot of guys who feel the same way when you're playing with them. When you do it this way, everybody feels a little bit different. Everybody feels like they have a goal, and you get to know your roster. It's really important, if you want to build good stories, it's really important to deeply know your roster. And that sounds silly, I know, it's a video game, but get to know your guys. Get in character. Imagine that you run this company and you are talking to these guys, right? Or you're coming up with these characters. What do these characters want? They all have to have a direction. You can't have characters with no direction. Get into it. Get to know them. Get to know what's going on in their head, what they want, what they don't want, what they like, what they don't like. And it makes coming up with storylines a whole hell of a lot easier, because it becomes very easy it becomes very easy to think of how that character would react in that situation, and you can book them accordingly. Razor Ramon. If Razor Ramon gets attacked and gets cost a title, if that happens to Shawn Michaels, if Shawn Michaels gets attacked by somebody and it costs him a title, he's going to immediately go back after that guy. Immediately. Because that's how Shawn Michaels does it. Shawn Michaels doesn't care about anyone but himself. He wants that revenge. But if that happened to Razor Ramon, maybe Razor takes a step back. Maybe he doesn't go after him. Maybe he pretends it kind of rolled off him and he forgot about it. But a year later, Razor might get his revenge. Or maybe Razor kind of sets into motion this whole this intricate plan and uses and manipulates other workers to get that job done for him. Who knows? But it's things like that where you start to feel how different guys would react differently to different situations. And that leads to good, believable stories that people can relate to. So that's where I'll leave it. Personality, short-term goal most of the time, long-term goal most of the time. And you don't have to do this for your whole roster. I got my main event guys here. I'll eventually move on to my upper mids. It helps to do a little something for all your guys. For your lower level guys, you don't necessarily have to give them goals. You can just give them a little bit of a personality, and just even if it's one sentence, one or two sentences, just so that because you're never using these guys, you don't have to have goals for your enhancement talent. But it would be nice to have a little something written down just so you know who they are in case you decide you do want to start to push them. And then you can further flesh that out later on. So there you go. Leave a comment, leave a like, a subscribe, do what you gotta do, or don't do any of that stuff, whatever. If there's another topic you want me to cover, go ahead and leave a comment with that. I really enjoy doing these. I enjoy doing these as much as I enjoy playing the actual game, frankly. Mainly because I like to hear myself talk. So thanks for stopping by. Thanks for checking this out. I hope you got something out of it. I hope you learned something out of it. And go ahead and let me know if you want anything else. So thanks for stopping by. And don't forget to, stop by next time.